Hello, everybody. We are going to start on Exodus 12 about the Passover. So, if you have your Bibles, open them up and we will begin. So, uh, we're going to start this off. This is probably going to be a little bit longer than usual because it is a long chapter and it's a lot to explain. So, but here we're going to go with it. So, starting off, chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. Now the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be your beginning of months. It'll be the first month of the year to you. Speak to all the congregation of the children of Israel, saying, On the 10th day of this month, every man shall take for himself a lamb, according to the family households, a lamb for each home. Before this plague or judgment happens, Moses tells them how they're going to commemorate this Pascha every year, this Passover. So he's instructing them that this is going to happen tonight and that we're going to do this every year in the future on this day. So the focus, you would think, would be on preparing to get ready to leave Egypt and then dealing with how they're going to do this. But that's not what God wants. God wants them to focus on this first because he has them covered. He's trying to tell them he's got them covered. Trust him. So we also get some typology for Christ here in the very beginning, when in the New Testament they celebrate Pascha in a room, right, before his death takes place. Jesus institutes the Eucharist there. This is my body broken for you. His body hadn't yet been broken. That was about to happen. So the New Testament follows the same pattern here as Torah does. The event here in Torah that's about to happen is not a one-time thing either. It's going to be something with eternal and cosmic importance, something with an ongoing effect and a continual participation for them and their children and all generations to come after. So ongoing and permanent. And this happens in the New Testament with Christ as well. That's why we do the Eucharist for all generations and all generations to come after, right? Fun little fact there. So it says this will be the first month for you. So some of you that are watching this might ask, how can this be the first month when Rosh Hashanah is the head of the year? Well, the answer is that Torah has two overlapping calendars. So it's got two of them. One of them is based on agricultural cycles, and then this other one is put over it with Pascha, and later more feasts like Pentecost, 50 days after Pascha, will be added. The liturgical calendar of Orthodox Christianity also works in the same manner. Everyone, Jewish and Christian, dates the Pascha the same way. The only thing is we disagree on when the moon is truly full. That's the only difference between us on that calendar. And that's the argument, is when is the moon full? Like, when is it truly full? A full moon. So carrying on. Verses 4 through 10. If there be too few in a household, let him and his neighbor next to his house take it according to the number of souls. He'll make his count in lambs according to the needs of each one. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. You'll take it from the sheep or the kids. Then you'll keep it until the 14th day of the same month, and all of Israel shall kill it at twilight. Then they'll take some of the blood and put it on the two doorposts and on the lintel of the houses where they eat it. They'll eat the flesh on that night, roasted in fire, with unleavened bread and bitter herbs they'll eat it. Don't eat it raw, nor boiled at all with water, but roasted in fire, its head with its legs and its entrails. You will let none of it remain until morning, nor will you break a bone of it. And what remains of it until morning you'll burn with fire. So, what it's saying here is, if you're a small family and you cannot eat a whole lamb, share it with another small family and y'all eat it together. Eat it, and anything left, burn in the morning. Put the lamb's blood on the doorpost. Why do you need to do that? Well, to make a distinction between Israel and Egypt. And if you do this, no matter who you are now ritually an Israelite. And this is on an ongoing basis. So, uh, dispensationalist, Israel only, people like that. This right here, you are refuted on this part. If you do this task, you are ritually an Israelite. There is no ands, ifs, or buts. You are an Israelite. Ritually, you are an Israelite. So, Anyways, in Leviticus, we will see that it says if one desires to become an Israelite, they must be circumcised and eat the Passover meal. That'll make one a full, no ands, ifs, or buts Israelite. And if you stop celebrating the Pascha, you will not be a ritual Israelite. So, this is also true for us as Orthodox Christians. You need to be baptized, the new circumcision. You need to receive the Eucharist, a Paschal meal. The canons of the Church even say that the bare minimum to remain Eastern Orthodox is to receive the Eucharist on Pascha. So, if you go a whole year without receiving the Eucharist, you are ritually no longer an Orthodox Christian and are counted as lapsed. In other words, there's a service to reconcile and restore you to the church also, and I think there is one on Judaism as well, to do the Paschal. Um, Now, some Protestants, I should say, shouldn't generalize, right? Some Protestants will argue that the Paschal Lamb is proof for their doctrine of penal substitution. They'll argue, well, the Lamb is the substitute for their firstborn son. The question, though, must be asked, however, what if you don't have a firstborn son? What if you just have a bunch of daughters? There's also just one lamb, and you can share it too. It's not one lamb for each firstborn son. No, so that theory does not work. God also does not want to kill the firstborn Israelites. The only reason that firstborn Egyptians are dying tonight is because of non repentance and for the murder of innocent Israelite children by Pharaoh and Egypt as a whole when they did as ordered. God also does not need a lamb to be offered to him to appease his wrath, like some claim. God is not a pagan deity who needs to be appeased by sacrifices. Also, I should add this: if uh, if an ethnic Israelite did not do this, do the uh, do this as well, they would have the same fate as the Egyptians because they become basically ritually an Egyptian. So, if an Egyptian or an Israelite did this, like was commanded, they would be spared. Everybody would have been spared. But these people were told, but they purposely still did not listen. So they got the judgment. They were warned over and over again. So there's not really any justification for, well, this is unfair, this is unjust. Like, no, they were warned tons of times. They knew what to do. So it just is what it is there. Um, they were told what to do and they would be spared because God is merciful, right? But there is also wrath. At some point, God's wrath does come because uh, he has to reset creation. It's gotten so bad and disordered that he needs to put it into order. He needs to order the chaos. So, um, anyways, that was a little tangent, but anyways, the purpose of the Paschal lamb is to offer your best lamb to God and give him your best. You must eat the whole lamb, no altar involved. Nothing here is offered to God like some of the Levitical laws do. This does have to do with God, but it has more to do with becoming God's people, or in other words, becoming an Israelite ritually. So verses 11 through 12. Thus you'll eat it with a belt on your waist, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. You will eat it in haste. It's the Lord's Pascha. It's the Lord's Passover. For I will pass through the land of Egypt on that night and strike all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt I will execute vengeance, for I am the Lord. The text says to eat it quickly and that God will pass through Egypt on that night and strike all the firstborn, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt will I execute my vengeance. So it's very clear here from the text that the text does not see the gods of Egypt as just physical, like it doesn't see them as fictional characters, fake characters. They're actual demonic spirits that the Egyptians follow and worship. These demons are the ones who led Egypt down this path of death and destruction, and in the sin and wicked state that they're in now and are being judged for. God is judging the Egyptians, but who is God's true enemy here in Exodus? It's not the Egyptian people, nor is it even the Pharaoh who declares he is a deity himself. It's his genius, aka the spirit that is behind him and the Egyptian people. This may also be why Pharaoh is not named, because he's not the real enemy here. It's the demonic entities, the gods of Egypt. Um, and remember, they were told, they were given a way out of this. Egypt was given a way out of this, but they did not take it. So these Israelites who are slaves are about to be freed, but so are the Egyptians who will join with Israel in the Exodus, setting themselves free from the slavery to sin and wickedness and bondage to their former gods that they served. So when the New Testament says we're free from slavery to sin and uses that language of Christ and his death and his resurrection, it happened in a very literal sense with Christ and for the Exodus too. So just as these Gentiles in the New Testament will become part of the church or Israel, Egyptians here in Exodus will become part of Israel. All can be set free from God's enemies. So continuing, verses 13 through 14. Now the blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you are, and when I see the blood, I'll pass over you. And the plague will not be on you to destroy you when I strike the land of Egypt. So this day shall be to you a memorial, and you'll keep it as a feast to the Lord throughout your generations. You'll keep it as a feast by an everlasting ordinance. So it uses the word memorial here. That Greek word shows up in the New Testament with the Eucharist as it's being instituted by Christ. And throughout your generations means forever. Eastern Orthodoxy did not quit doing the Paschal Feast. None of Christendom stopped doing the Paschal Feast. We still celebrate Pascha today and do so through the Eucharist. The Old Testament has not been eradicated. It was fulfilled by Christ. It was not destroyed. We still do things today that are in Torah. Like Pascha, for example. We do that every Easter, every Pascha. Protestants call it Pascha or call it Easter, and we usually call it Pascha. Anyways, so verses 15 through 20. 7 days you will eat unleavened bread. On the first day you'll remove leaven from your houses. For whoever eats leavened bread from the first day until the seventh day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. On the first day there will be a holy convocation, and on the seventh day there will be a holy convocation for you. No servile work shall be done on them. And whatever must be done by each soul, this shall only be done by you. So you'll keep this commandment, for on this same day I will bring your army out of the land of Egypt. Therefore, you'll observe this day throughout your generations as an everlasting ordinance. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, in the evening, you'll eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month at evening. For 7 days, no leaven shall be found in your houses, since whoever eats what's leavened, that soul will be cut off from the congregation of Israel. Whether he's a stranger or a native of the land, you'll eat nothing leavened. In all your dwellings you'll eat unleavened bread. The part about 7 days does not apply to this particular time because they don't have 7 days to prepare for this meal. But this is for the future because they do not have time. It gives us more information about the whole week later, this Holy Week. And that's what they call it, the Holy Week. So seventh day you will observe and not work that day. You will eat unleavened bread for 7 days, and this must be followed, or you're not ritually in Israel anymore. So it says many times that they must do the Paschal Feast, or they are not an Israelite. And this applies wherever they are, Egypt, Babylon, etc. So verses 21 through 28. Then Moses called for the elders of Israel and said to them, "Go away and take a lamb for yourselves, according to your families, and sacrifice the Pascha. Then you'll take a bunch of hyssop, dip it in the blood in the basin, and strike the lintel and the 2 doorposts with the blood in the basin. But none of you will go out from the door of his house until morning, for the Lord will pass through to strike the Egyptians, and when he sees the blood on the lintel and on the 2 doorposts, the Lord will pass by the door and not allow the destroyer to come into your house to strike you. Now you'll observe this thing as an ordinance to you and your children forever. So if you enter the land the Lord shall give you, as he promised, you'll keep this service. Thus it'll be when your children say to you, 'What does this service mean?' You will say, 'This is the Paschal service sacrifice of the Lord.' who passed over the houses of the children of Israel in Egypt when he struck the Egyptians and delivered our households. So the people bowed down and worshipped. Then the children of Israel went away and did as the Lord commanded Moses and Aaron, so they did. So Moses calls the elders together, and Israel as a whole kills the lambs. They don't have a priesthood yet, so this ritual goes to the elders of Israel to do. Fun fact, the Greek word for presbyter and priest is used for elders here. So in the Septuagint, it is presbyter that's used for elder. They are instructed to they are instructed to take hyssop, dip it in the lamb's blood, and put the blood over their doorpost. If they do, the Lord will pass over them who do this and spare them. Says verse 24, you'll observe this for you and your children forever. Verses 25 to 28 give us an explanation and explain all this and its meaning for new Israelites and the children of Israel, so that they too can pass this on and observe it and be God's people forever. So the plague begins, the plague of the death of the firstborn. Verses 29 through 36. Now it came to pass at midnight, the Lord struck all the firstborn of the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sat on his throne to the firstborn of the captive women in the dungeon, and the firstborn of all the cattle. So Pharaoh rose in the night, he and his servants and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in all the land of Egypt, for there was not a house where there wasn't one dead. Then he called for Moses and Aaron by night and said, rise, go out from among my people, both you and the children of Israel. Go and serve the Lord as you said. Take also your sheep and oxen. Go and bless me as well. The Egyptians also urged the people so as to send them out of the land in haste, for they said, we'll all be dead. So the people took their dough before it was leavened, having their netted bowls bound up in their clothes on their shoulders. Thus the children of Israel did as Moses commanded, and asked from the Egyptian articles of silver, gold, and clothing. Now the Lord gave the people grace in the sight of the Egyptians, who gave it to them. Thus they plundered the Egyptians. So the plague and judgment begins, and the Lord takes all the firstborn, even Pharaoh's own child. Pharaoh rises in the night, and all of Egypt who did not listen mourn the dead. Pharaoh calls for Moses and Aaron and finally relents, telling them to leave and even asks them to bless him as well. The Egyptians all begin trying to rush Israel out. So verses 36, you will also notice there's military language being used here, that they plundered the Egyptians. But why does it say that? Because Israel didn't fight here. Like, why does it say that if they didn't fight? Well, God fought this battle for them, and God won. They just had to receive their share of the spoils here. So this will become a paradigm that they're going to have to follow also. When they go to the promised land and battle and have defensive wars, God's going to take care of it if they follow him, with an emphasis on a repentant heart. And obviously it's going to get messy. So they won't be able to bribe God like the pagans would attempt to do with their deities, the demons. We hopefully, and this is applied today, but we hopefully won't have to get into a lot of physical battles, but we will face battles and struggles. God has promised us, just like them, that he will care for us, and we're responsible for the state of our hearts before God. So a good lesson here is to focus on God during any trial or struggle that you're going through, because God has this. God's going to be victorious if we just trust him. Like, we just need to trust him. So verses 37 through 42, the Exodus. Then the children of Israel journeyed from Ramses to Succoth, about 600,000 men on foot, besides their belongings. A mixed multitude also went up with them, along with sheep, oxen, and a great deal of cattle. Then they baked unleavened cakes of the dough which they brought out of Egypt, for it was unleavened, because the Egyptians drove them out, and they couldn't remain, nor had they prepared for themselves provisions for the journey. Now the sojourn of the children of Israel who lived in Egypt and in the land of Canaan was 430 years. Then it came to pass at the end of the 430 years that the entire army of the Lord went out from the land of Egypt by night. It is a night of vigil to the Lord for bringing them out of the land of Egypt. This is the night of vigil for the Lord. This is the night of vigil to the Lord for all the children of Israel throughout their generations. So Israel journeys from Ramses to Succoth, and it says with 600,000 men, which would mean plus women and children. So that is an absurd number, and it would actually be historically impossible for that time. So does that make the Torah false? No. So we had talked in Genesis about how Hebrew and Greek do not have numerals, nor do they use precise numbers like we do today. So you would use letters and words to encode numbers in Hebrew or Greek. That's why translations of Hebrew and Greek will have some completely random different numbers going on. And in Hebrew, it's actually saying there are 600 1,000s. So, in other words, there are 600 clans with a big number of people, which is not countable. So, it's not a literal precise number, but it is a lot of people. That's what it's trying to get across here. This is actually similar to the way that Revelation uses 1,000 as simply meaning a lot, a big number. It's a symbolic number. So, there you go. There is symbolism, obviously, in Exodus, just like there was in Genesis. Um, so, verses 38, a mixed multitude, people, Egyptians, who before tonight were not Israelites. So, sorry, Israel only. Here's another verse that messes up your plans. Um, also, sorry, Black Hebrew Israelites. Sorry, British Israelites. This refutes you. So they leave Egypt. 430 years is not a precise number here either. Hebrew and Greek both have different numbers. Dating Exodus again is hard, and like Genesis, it's not the point of what Torah is trying to make. So now we get finally to the Paschal regulations. So verses 43 through 51. Now the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "This is the law of Pascha. No foreigner shall eat it. But every man's servant, every man's slave brought with money, when you circumcise him, then he may eat it. A sojourner and a hired servant cannot eat it. In one house it'll be eaten. You won't carry any of the flesh outside the home, nor will you break one of its bones. All the congregation of the children of Israel must keep it. But when a stranger dwells with you and wants to keep the Lord's Pascha, let all his males be circumcised, and then let him come near and sacrifice it, and he will be as a native of the land. For no uncircumcised person shall eat it. One law shall be for the native born, and for the stranger who dwells among you. Thus all the children of Israel did, as the Lord commanded Moses and Aaron, so they did. So it came to pass on that very same day that the Lord brought the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt with their army. So the Lord speaks to Moses and Aaron and gives the Paschal laws. No non-Israelite ritually may eat the Paschal meal. Slaves may when circumcised. And by the way, since we're talking about slaves here, Exodus 22 says that every slave that is an Israelite ritually and ethnically, they must be released on the seventh year. So just an interesting fact there. So anyways, we'll cover that when we get to it. But slaves may, when circumcised, eat the Passover. So foreigners may live in Israel also, but they cannot eat the Paschal meal. One must be circumcised and become an Israelite to do so. Sojourners and hired servants, non-Israelites, ritually, must not eat it. So all who are part of the household, slaves included, must be circumcised and all eat it. So in other words, get circumcised, all males, and become an Israelite to partake in the Pascha. This also applies to the Eucharist in the Orthodox Church today, and this is why we don't have open communion. But if you join us ritually, you can have the Eucharist with us. It's not because we don't like you or whatever. That's how we do it. Ritually, we're following like the Jews do with this. Like I said, Torah still applies today in a way. So it wasn't destroyed. It was fulfilled. So how does that? So you apply that today that way. So we're going to go into that a lot in Leviticus and some stuff like that. Even Exodus, we're going to go into that a lot actually. But continuing, verses 49, there's one law for native born and one for the stranger who dwells with you. Verses 51 again uses military language. God won the victory. They're out. They're out of Egypt. So this passage will introduce this passage. Ooh, sorry. This passage will produce Acts 15, Galatians, etc., because there would be questions within the early church with the Eucharist Christ gave on Pascha. You would have Torah observant Jewish Christians and Gentile Christians all taking it. And the question became, don't the Gentiles have to be circumcised to take the Eucharist and become part of Israel, aka the church? Well, St. James in Acts 15 ultimately makes the ruling and decision about the state of non Jewish Christians, which he bases on Leviticus 17, 23, and 24, the holiness codes. That there are commands for the sons of Israel, and then there are some commands that are aimed at Gentiles in Israel that they have to follow in Leviticus. So St. James rules that these are the laws of Torah that Gentile Christians will need to continue observing, and that they must have the status of equality. But they are guests in the house of Israel. This will also be why St. Paul says, if you get circumcised, you must follow the whole Torah, not just the parts aimed at everyone. So Christ fulfills the Passover, and we celebrate it through the Eucharist today. So we'll be covering that, obviously, like I just said. We'll be covering Torah laws and how Christians observe them today, and how we should treat this, since Torah, Christ says, was not destroyed or done away with, but fulfilled. And we will explain this a lot better as we continue through Exodus and eventually get into Leviticus and various other spots where it's talked about, right? But anywho, that is all of Exodus 12. So, I know that was a little bit of that's probably the longest one we've had in a while. But necessary because it's a long chapter and it's very necessary to do that. So, anyways, though, if you like this podcast, hit like and subscribe. And next up, we'll be doing Exodus 13. So, anyways, we'll talk to you later, and I hope you all are being blessed. Thank you, and see you later.